If Logic was my first love, then Ableton stole my heart in a Paris cafe and swept me off my feet and rode into the sunset. So lonely. Hey everybody, Alexander Morgan here, but my friends call me Schmorgle. Old and new producers alike are probably always going to be in search of the best, most perfect DAW. It's been forever debated which digital audio workstation truly is the best. At least I think it has. Maybe the argument just stops at the YouTube thumbnail if we're all being honest. That being said, I think finding the right DAW is an integral part of discovering your most efficient workflow when writing and producing music. At this point, I've dabbled in a few of them and am slowly but surely developing my own preferences. Beyond that, I'm no expert, but I certainly have some useful insight in getting things from here into there. A computer. It's a computer. Today we'll be looking at a few of the most popular DAWs and figure out which one is right for you. I'm mainly going to be covering the big four, which are Logic Pro, Ableton Live, Pro Tools, and FL Studio. I have a little bonus section at the end, lumping in a few alternatives and some cheaper recommendations. Now, you may wonder, why should I trust this random dude on the internet who literally just said this? I'm no expert. Well, like most things in my life, I'm horribly indecisive. So I've stumbled through the beginner to intermediate stages of all these DAWs multiple times. In fact, those inadequacies may make me the perfect person to talk about this. I'm also coming at this from a little more of a songwriter's perspective than a producer. Those things can be really lumped together these days, but the perspective is slightly different in my opinion. So if any of this sounds like you and you're on the fence, I think I can help you make a decision. If you like this video and glean any insight, think about giving it a like and maybe even subscribing to the channel. All right, enough nonsense. I want the algorithm to be kind to this video. Let's jump in. Logic Pro. Truly a songwriter's DAW. Logic is my first love and where I learned most of what I know about recording music. Being a garage bander in college, it just seemed like a natural step when I wanted to up my production game. You get so much baked into this apple, get it? For the very competitive price of $200, you get a ton of samples, some beefy plugins, drum kits, guitar amps, and some pretty solid versions of all your basic stuff like EQs, compressors, and reverbs. Hands down, the #1 feature for me that distinguishes Logic from everything else is its flex tool. You can modulate pitch, timing, and a number of other factors right there in the audio clip. It's also by far, in my opinion, the best built-in vocal tuner. It kind of feels like an entry-level Melodyne, which is a great thing to have. The UI is functional, reliable, and fairly flexible. You can change most parameters, but as a whole, things feel very weighty, very clicky. It feels like you're moving these bigger blocks around. If you're someone who likes to stay really organized and feel like you're moving chunks around, this may be a plus. If you're a singer-songwriter and you're mainly just tracking guitar and vocals, this may be the best option for you. One thing to keep in mind is that it is an Apple product. It functions like a dream, but only on Mac OS. There's seamless interconnectivity to other hardware in the ecosystem, if you're an Apple maximalist. It's a one-time purchase at a good price with a lot of stuff. But if you ever want to upgrade to later versions, you're gonna have to pay full retail price. It's that classic Apple sheen with just a little dash of greed. So, would I go out to buy an Apple computer just so I can run Logic? No. If I already have an Apple computer and just want a great program? Absolutely. Definitely worth checking out before you dish up the cash. Don't worry, Tim Cook could afford it. Ableton Live. Have it your way. If Logic was my first love, then Ableton stole my heart in a Paris cafe and swept me off my feet and rode into the sunset. So dumb. If you've been watching me for a while, then you'll know this is my DAW of choice. But it's not necessarily everyone's choice. I believe it is the most popular DAW, but just by a small margin, and for a good reason. Ableton just hits so many marks well. It's like a jack of all trades, but a master of none, except it is a master of just a couple of things. A bad metaphor, I'll admit. The point is, it makes sense why electronic musicians lean more towards Ableton. It just does that so well. Of course, you can track audio like any other program out there, but Ableton only recently made tracking more desirable with their release of Live 11. Comping in Ableton was really meh until now, and even still, I think there are better options out there. But like literally everything else, I just love the workflow here. Unlike most other DAWs, you see your whole plugin chain at the bottom of the screen on any given track. This is a simple but vital design choice that I think goes a really long way in terms of visualizing your sound. You're also just opening less menus in Ableton. It's all kind of right there, so if you just have an idea, bam, you just click it and it happens. Things just seem light and easy in the UI. You can pull everything around like paper. Function is really the name of the game with Ableton, and with a simple double click on any piece of audio, you can right then and there manipulate a ton of different factors. Change pitch, timing, you can slice it, reverse it, I mean, you name it. The simpler instrument lets you take any sound and turn it into exactly that. an instrument. Great for, I don't know, like turning your dog's bark into a synth. Let's just say we're talking Live 11 since that's the most recent one. You can get the light version for 99 bucks. It's pretty cheap, but it is limited. Things quickly get steep as you move up in tiers, and the standard edition is a whopping 500 bucks. But you get so much in that package. Now, on paper, this is really not as good a deal, but the quality of what you're getting is close to unmatched. Lastly, there's the Suite version, which is a whopping 750 bucks. If you have the cash, I personally think it's really worth it. The sounds and synths that come with Max Live and everything built into the Suite, it deserves its own video, really. What's great about Ableton is that you can upgrade to the next tier at any time, and you just pay the difference. Of course, there's a 90-day free trial you can get on their website, and it gives you the Suite version so you can sort of get the middle ground of professionalism. Speaking in very broad strokes here, if Logic is the songwriter's ideal, then Ableton might be the producer's ideal. Don't at me, but leave a comment. Pro Tools. Playing with the big kids. This is the program that I have the least hands-on experience with, but I've witnessed more sessions than like any other DAW. In 2015, I wrote and recorded an album at Riff Studios, and engineer Tom Gardner had to suffer me breathing down his neck while he mixed and mastered my whole record. He did it on Pro Tools, and I watched him religiously. And after all that, I totally understand why it's still, to this day, the industry standard. For one, it's just like a no funny business DAW, man. What you see is what you get. There's endless functional channels, routing is seamless and streamlined, and it emulates the workflow that engineers have been relying on for decades. I also know Pro Tools to be one of the more friendly programs to third-party software, especially the legacy stuff. Sure, maybe you gotta download a patch or two. It's an older program, but it just works. It's sort of the mature chaperone at this DAW prom. What? And because of that, sometimes design-wise, it can show its age a little bit. So with all that in mind, is it a good pick for you? Well, I'll tell you this. If you have goals to run big sessions in big studios with even bigger artists, Pro Tools is a must. Almost every engineer I've met runs Pro Tools in their studio. Almost every audio gig I've applied for requires a proficiency in Pro Tools. Having even the basic knowledge of this program gives you a huge leg up in the industry at large. And frankly, I think it'll set you up the best for adapting to other DAWs. Someone once told me that if you know how to run Pro Tools, you can pretty much learn how to run anything else. Is that true? Probably not, but it sure sounds good. As far as pricing goes, Pro Tools has a little bit of a different system compared to other DAWs. It is a subscription-based model, which don't run for the hills yet. Yes, that can be a tough pill to swallow, especially when it's, quite a bit of money, but it's just the direction that most things are going in. I mean, look at Adobe. So many people use Adobe despite the price point. The best value is a 1-year subscription paid up front for 300 bucks. You can break it down within that year commitment by paying monthly for 30 bucks. Or you do the monthly subscription that's cancel at any time at 35 bucks. Of course, you can download the light version of Pro Tools. Now, this is not just a demo. This is a free program you can download. It is limited. Yes, it is not the real Pro Tools, but it gives you a real sense of what the program is about. So head over to Avid's website and see if this industry standard meets your standard. So lonely. FL Studio. If making music was like building Lego sets. To complete the metaphor, FL Studio is my most recent fling. I made a video a while back where I did a blind dive into the digital sea that is FL Studio, and I've learned to really love the program since then. To say that there's a learning curve is an understatement. That being said, once you crack the code, it's almost like this experience of, wow, how did I ever work any other way? In all fairness, I had a similar experience in Ableton, but that was just kind of baseline workflow. In FL Studio, it's like a whole music-making paradigm shift. If that sounds a little too dramatic, it's because it is. FL Studio is not laid out like a traditional DAW. Yes, it does have an arrangement window, but be cautious, young producer. It's best to work in FL Studio with a loop-focused mindset. It's kind of like the clip function in Ableton, but on steroids. FL Studio really shines when you build your track part by part, and think of your arrangement as these chunks that you sort of paint in. So once you've, say, built your drum rack, you place that whole section right on the arrangement window. At that point, you're moving that section around in its entirety, not note by note. This is a subtle difference in conception, but a massive difference in execution. If you're looking at things in Ableton at one note at a time, you have to shift that whole thought in FL Studio to be effective at it in parts. If you're someone who doesn't really know music making programs well, but you do use editing software or beat pads or even looping stations, this might be the best option for you. I actually think the perfect person for FL Studio is someone who's never touched a DAW before. There's like this intuitiveness that I think I'm pre-programmed against, if that makes sense. I overthought every part of it when I jumped in with the prior knowledge from other DAWs. I'd be really curious if you're coming in blank slate if this makes a lot more sense than it did to me. Let me know in the comments, I'd be really curious. It also helps that this program has a beautiful UI. Everything's really clean, really focused. You can move any window across the screen and make your own arrangement view however you like. It also comes with a ton of tasteful VSTs and some of my favorite presets that I've heard in any DAW. Pricing is really similar to Ableton, except this one has 4 tiers. Basic version's at $100, and then it goes up in price and quality at the 200, 300, and 500 level. If you want to learn more about the details between each version and even try a free version of it, head over to their website. I believe the trial is really open-ended, and I just opened it today and still have it going, so I think it gives you a pretty hefty amount of time. In my opinion, definitely worth the download just to experience it. Oh, also, pro tip, this button, it's important. Trust me. Those are what some people would call the big dogs, but that's really just the tip of the iceberg as far as programs. There are just so many out there that are really worth exploring. If you're someone who's on a budget and is mainly just trying to record their voice or like starting a podcast, I really recommend Audacity. It's a free program, really easy to use, no bells and whistles, and it's definitely a good entry-level program so you can just learn the basics. Similarly, if you're a Mac user, you most likely have GarageBand built onto your computer. Right here, right now, I want to try and get rid of the stigma around GarageBand. Maybe it's just me, but I think that there's this like narrative that it's a program for babies, and it's not the most robust, but it's still really good. It's more than viable, and I've seen big artists write awesome tracks on the thing. If you got it, click the button, try it out. No one's gonna judge you. I won't judge you. If you're a video or photo editor and you have the whole Adobe suite, definitely try out Audition. It's in the Adobe ecosystem and it has a lot of really good use cases. I believe it's the industry standard for voiceover and really good for post-production and film. If you have a track with a lot of degradation or hiss or just like parts that you want to get rid of, a lot of useful tools for correcting noisy audio. Now, if all you have is a smartphone, there are tons of free programs to start learning how to make beats. But if you want something that functions more like a DAW, I actually really recommend Andrew Huang's Flip app. This is not sponsored at all. He didn't send me it or anything. I bought it and I really dig it. It really feels more like a DAW than just a regular app. And if you're someone who's on the go and only has their phone as a device, it's really worth checking out. Lastly, I really want to reiterate this. Use whatever you got. Limitations spawn creativity. I firmly believe this. I say this all the time. If all you have is a random piece of free software or your phone, just start with that. Make your music. And with enough repetition and time, you can turn any janky piece of software into a really viable part of your toolkit. Really just putting in the time to learn what you have will make you excel as a music maker. And with those inspiring words, I'll leave you with this. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel and share with all your friends. Okay, bye-bye.